the actions of Soteria, they follow us, from my perspective, they follow two lines. One line is to have this kind of events that that we joined today, and to try to solve the problem with a different mindset that created the problem, to raise a little bit, to expand the consciousness, and to raise the level of approach to the question. Another line of the actions of Soteria is to try to fight the problem with the same tools that are creating the problems. We are trying to address all the European institutions, European so far, not due to our limited resources and budget, to European politicians and European and international government organizations, and try to raise this issue, try to raise the abuses that are happening, try to raise the awareness that actually there is a major abuse happening in the European Union, a democratic communion of democratic states. There was, I had an explanation, so to say, that Romania might be a former totalitarian country, and that could explain part of the abuses, but now it's happening not only in the former totalitarian countries, and it's only pointing out to what Advaitananda was saying earlier, that there is a systemic failure, there is a general, not we will continue this work. We try to be as creative as possible. We try to be as resourceful as possible. We also rely very much on the help of the spiritual practicants, of the spiritual movements themselves, because it is ultimately their voice that is heard. We are just the device that it's making stronger, but the voice, it's ultimately of the spiritual movements. And we are open to all suggestions, all support, and we are trying to do our best.
In addition to what Natalia just said, the active principle in both lines of action is a principle of awareness. In the first line of action, creating of these events in order to, by putting awareness and these kind of questions, raising the level of debate and creating the notions which are needed for this kind of transformation. The second line of debate, which is more relevant to the question of Advaitananda right now, in combating such phenomena when they happen to different schools, no matter what and no matter where, is by putting awareness there. The notion that darkness is cast away by simply putting light. Violations like this can take place in the shadows. They cannot take place in the light. So some elements, some power circles can abuse the law, can use media to defamate when people are not aware of what's going on. The moment that they can see that people are there, aware, asking questions, when they need to start to answer questions to media, when they need to start answer questions to Europarliamentarians, to different NGOs, asking questions, they start to realize, wait a minute, we can get busted for what we're doing here. And then they start to really play by the book, which is not allowing them to make these kind of violations. And this is a place where these suggestions that were made here about creating networks, creating alliances, can help very much, because they are counting on the fact that if they are taking a certain school and that school starts to make noise, no, not one school doesn't make much noise. Plus, who would believe? Because, I mean, you're protecting yourself. But if the next day the chief of police starts to get phone calls from 20 different organizations, and press, different journalists starts getting a lot of calls, and members of parliament from that country start to get calls from many different organizations, and they start themselves to ask questions, then everybody realizes they have to now act correctly, and they cannot bend the rules because it fits them to get rid of somebody that is sticking their finger in the eye, pointing out something that is uncomfortable for them.
Unfortunately, when we talk about religious discrimination, it is always these big religions, Islam and Judaism and Christianity and Hinduism or Sikhism. And it is very important that when there is a kind of overview, then we can also contact Human Rights Agency in Vienna, because they work with those issues. I can give you a lot of good addresses. I know the director. I also know the person who worked with. So in this way, when you let people know what is happening, and then the second thing is name and shame. I am a very big believer of that, name and shame. If somebody does something wrong, he or she is not going to get away with that. I will put her face, her name on the internet and say, hey, this. There's a very big organization called Simon Wiesenthal Institute in Paris. They work with anti-Semitism. Every year, they make a list of 10 most anti-Semitic statements by politicians. And they plaster their names, what they said, and I tell you, those politicians don't like that. So in order to fight back, you don't have to fight back with guns. You have lots of tools in front of you. Social media is very important. I'm sure you have a Facebook or you have an internet homepage. So that make what is happening with religious minorities, spiritual minorities, known to the world through NGOs, through MEPs, through European Parliament, so that the issues are brought in front of EU Commission, in front of Council of Europe. There is a lot of possibilities you can do, but somebody has to take a step, So first thing you can do is to have an overview. Because I'm sure if they say, oh, in Italy they are doing that, they say, oh, it's just in Italy, nowhere else they're doing. But if you have a little bit overview, then you can present, hey, look, it's not only Italy, it's in Romania, it's in Slovakia, it is in Lithuania, all those places, these things are happening, So that will be a good start, I think.
I would be interested if we could keep communication and maybe discuss how we can respond collectively. Maybe we could even have a press release stating our collective opposition to that, and maybe discussing other issues that we could we could at least discuss together, and then determine some kind of thing that we would like to, statement that we would like to release on that. And I think we could all get some good training from Mr. Kuaishi. Maybe we should ask you back for some coaching.
The important thing is that we should not sit in our comfort zone and say that we are fine, hell with the rest, because today if it is my turn, tomorrow is his turn, and day after tomorrow is your turn. Because those forces who are anti-religious, anti-spiritual, they're not waiting, they go piecemeal, But the response should be very professional, very coordinated, and very persistent. Almost every month or every second week, a small press release, a small statement, or it should go. And it should not go only to few people, it should go all over. And there you people have contacts. Church of Scientology have a huge contact plan. So involve them also. So they don't only talk about church, but they also talk about others, And this kind of, collective effort will also tell other people, hey, they're not alone. They have been suffering, but now they have come out of the closet, and they're not going to take this shit anymore, So that's important. Sorry, brother.
When we protest against oppression and so on, I think that's fine. But it's also important to not become the victims of some big force which is suppressing us, because I think we'll fall into a ditch there. I think it's very important to say also, you started out with the whole concept of having positive spiritual, ethical qualities or statements or points to follow, in the sense of saying that we also as spiritual groups have to be ethical and have to work ethically within our own community and within our own society, so that we don't just portray ourselves as victims of some other oppressional force. I think it's because if we don't have that self-criticism, we ourselves are very objective to criticism. Because, I can just talk on behalf of the church. There's so much to criticize there. And if we are not the first ones to acknowledge that, we will just put ourselves much more under pressure of criticism. Always when I meet with people who are atheists, they would always say, oh, the church did this and the church did that, and in the colonizing times and so on. And I always start out agreeing. and actually even saying, I'm very sorry about that, because on behalf of the church, I'd really like to apologize for that, because this wasn't any good action. I think it's so important that we all are able to do that, because that will make the dialogue also about the oppression much more qualified. And that will make, you see what I'm saying, that we will then be on a more equal level with the people criticizing.
Yeah, also this attitude will not antagonize the forces, because being self-critic, and not, maybe critic is a word which sometimes is misunderstood, but being self-aware of the positive sides and also maybe the downfalls, the misunderstandings of the doctrine or the practice, or simply not being yet there, because this is also, you are on the path and you have to admit it. I am still walking, so if you ask me about the destination, I can say what I know from here, but well, I'm not yet there. So if there is any difference between me and the destination, I'm sorry, by default. Maybe I'm not yet there, but it's true, this will not antagonize the forces. However, sometimes, even without being this antagonism that we created, we are in a place that is polarizing other forces. So I think it goes this indication that we don't do it worse. It's like we minimize the, let's say, the situation by us learning whatever we can learn home. So we don't go in the market to scream to everyone. So in the end, we learn. But I'm sure that part of the lesson will be to solve it together, because as I see today, it is the time of togetherness. It is the time when the planet is too small to go away from the others. And probably this is the lesson of overpopulation. We are so many, so we can watch each other's back, so we can see each other from each angle, so there is nowhere to hide, nowhere to pretend that I am alone and I don't care about the others. So we have to deal with this now, and we cannot deal by reducing the population, as some believe that will be a solution, or by extincting some races, or there's absolutely craziness. We can try that, but it will not, obviously not work. And in the end, we will reach, in my opinion, to exactly the same conclusion. It is the time to deal with the round planet, meaning, as I used to joke about it, we are living on a round planet and we just reached its margins. So it's time to know that.
Said, because Elizabeth, I have lived in Denmark 42 years, and I can tell you that my experience with church has not been good. Not because they are bad, they are wonderful. I know personally many, many beautiful priests, Lizzie Rasmussen, one of the best ones. But at the same time, I also know that inside the Lutheran Church, there is actually network Christian church, priest against Islam, which is inside, and they make a lot of propaganda against Islam. And my point is that I don't want, every time I complain in Danish society, they say, oh, you want to be victim. I'm not victim. But there are certain things that you are oppressed, the minorities are oppressed, and it's very important that we have a common understanding where minorities stand, whether they're religious minority or ethnic or racial minorities. Once we get this common understanding, then it will be very easy. Then we will not use the jargon of oppressor and oppressed, because in many situations, oppressor can be oppressed and vice versa. But for me, the litmus test is justice. That you live in a society, you are accepted, that you feel sense of belonging, that the society lets you belong in the society. So I think that is a little bit of my request to you, especially to the church, is that church has to understand now that Denmark is not a mono-religious society. It has become inter-religious society. Whether it's a small religion or a big religion, but church has to understand and respect that. And in that sense, I think your contribution and involvement is alpha and omega, because you represent majority. And that's why it's very important if we can have a common platform, somehow where our starting point is that nobody should be oppressed, nobody should be unequal, and nobody should be treated unfairly. Then we can move forward.